So,
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started here. Call this December 20th, 2018 meeting of the AMATS Committee to order. Do a roll call. Mr. Sheedy.
here.
Ms. Heil.
Here.
And I'm Dave Kemp. We have a quorum. Craig, will you be doing the public involvement announcement?
Sure. All AMATS meetings are open to the public, and the public is invited to comment. If you have a business item, we'll have presentation by staff or a consultant, and then the committee will be given a chance to discuss it, and after that, the public will be invited to comment.
Thank you. Do we have an approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Do we have any changes? Are there any objections? Okay, the agenda is approved. We have before us the meeting minutes from October 25th, 2018 for approval. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve?
Second, I guess. I have to do that.
Any changes or discussion? Any objections? Okay, hearing none, the October 25th meeting minutes are approved. Okay, we have before us the meeting minutes from November 15th, 2018 for approval. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Any changes or discussions? Any objections? Okay, hearing none, the November 15th meeting minutes are approved. Moving on to Agenda 5A, the Unified Planning Work Plan 2018 Budget Major Amendment Number 2. Craig?
Yes. So this is our work program. This is staff time. And basically, this is our usual task that we do here at the end of the calendar year to balance the program. We are reimbursed. We set out our budget and we say we can spend this amount of these different tasks in the element, and the feds will reimburse us up to 110% in the element. So when we get a little bit over, we just move some monies around. There's no increase to the overall program. The dollar figure is the same. We're just taking some money out of the 500 element and moving it into the 200 element to balance the program to make sure that all of our tasks are reimbursed by federal funds and we don't cost any local taxpayer dollars. And the TAC heard this last week and recommended approval. Okay, to answer any questions if you want to drill down into it, but there you go.
Any questions from the committee?
I don't have any, no.
Any questions or comments from the public? Okay, what's the will of the committee?
Move to approve.
Second?
Any objections? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Okay, moving on to item 5D, 2015-2018 Transportation Improvement Program Administrative Modification Number 22. Craig?
Yes, I think this is a new record for administrative modifications for us, 22. Hopefully with the approval of the 2019 tip today, we won't have any more admin mods for this, but you never know, I guess.
Hold your breath.
These are some changes that the Public Transportation Department with the municipality is asking us to make in Table 7. It is outside of the AMATS allocation. Because this tip is still live, because we haven't adopted the next one, we can still make some changes to this. They have some changes in previous year's funding. In other words, 2016, 2017, 2018. Their funds just take a little longer to utilize, and so oftentimes they are moving monies around that may be a couple years old, but they can still do that. It's 100% perfectly legal. They're just asking due to some changes in their priorities to move those numbers around. You can see the numbers in the memo, and TAC looked at this and recommended approval. Again, it is not part of the AMATS allocation. It's FTA funds going to the Public Transportation Department.
Thank you, Craig. Any questions from the committee?
None.
Any questions or comments from the public? Okay, what's the will of the committee?
Move to approve?
Second.
Any objections? Hearing none, the motion's approved. I think I'm going to do this from now on. There's just going to be the three of us here.
Get a lot done.
Okay, let's move on to Agenda 5C, the 2019-2022 Transportation Improvement Program Air Quality Determination. Right?
Sure. So anytime we do a tip or a plan, the MTP, et cetera, we have an air quality determination that we need to do. Basically, this is, we have an air quality budget. Cindy could explain this in much greater detail and probably make a lot more sense. But in layman's terms, we have a budget of what we can pollute into the atmosphere, and they look at the projects that you do, the road projects, trail projects, non-motorized buses, et cetera, and they say, you know, is this going to go over the budget of what we're allowed to have going into the atmosphere? We have created a interagency consultation team, EPA, the Health Department, DEC, the other state agencies, et cetera, and they get together and they do the analysis. This analysis was done by the Municipal Health Department with a lot of folks helping, I'm sure. And again, in layman's terms, we don't bust the budget. We always have to look at the air quality determination first, because there's no reason to adopt a TIP or an MTP if it doesn't meet the air quality standards. And so that's why the air quality determination is up before you first. The document is there. It's very technical in nature, but I think it's written to the extent that most people can probably make sense of it if they chewed through it. Bottom line is, the analysis was done and we conform. And so the TAC looked at this and recommended approval. So that's what we're asking for you to do today. Approve this first, and then we'll look at the document next.
Approve the resolution first, and then we'll look at the document?
Yeah. Approve the air quality conformity.
We have to approve the air quality conformity determination, which is the technical document.
Right.
Before we can approve
The
the
resolution.
tip.
The TIP.
The tip, no, I get that.
Yeah.
I'm just asking, of the two items, there's the lengthy document, and then there's the resolution that sort of summarizes our action.
Yeah.
If
and
I
so
have
the-
questions that I
so-
want to ask Cindy, because I assume you're the subject matter expert,
You don't want to ask me? Yeah, yeah.
then I was just curious, do I
I've never
ask those
seen,
now, or do we just?
I've never seen a resolution on air quality conformity determination before.
So what the resolution is, what we do when we approve one of these documents is we send it down to state DOT, and then it goes on to Federal Highways and Federal Transit Administration. And this is, sometimes what they'll say is, you know, do you have minutes from the meeting to show that it was approved? Just so we dot the i's and cross the t's. And obviously, as you know, it takes a month before we get our minutes approved. Sometimes 2 months if we're really busy. So what the resolution is simply a way of showing, yes, it was approved on this date. And we haven't done that for a while, but in this case, I think we did this.
We just have a form that we just all sign, I thought.
So there's that. That's what,
There you go,
yeah.
there's the signature.
The resolution is just a little more, it just adds more information. The tip signing document is just saying it was approved. The resolution is what you see before you, which just kind of lays out a little more specifics, and then the signature just for our chair. And these are just documents that we will send along with the tip and the air quality conformity determination to show it was approved, so we don't have to wait another month to get the minutes and send those along.
I was going to ask a follow-up to that. Is this, doing it this way, is this a best practice from other MPOs that we're now adopting? Or is this your own original idea?
Well, I don't have any original ideas. This
Fair enough.
was something we did 4 years ago.
Okay. We're just doing it again.
Yeah, it was supposed to be me.
So I have a question here, since I'm going to be the one signing this thing. This says that we are in conformance for 2019, 2022, the TIP. So that's just looking at the projects that we're looking at bringing forward. It's not an actual air quality testing won't be done to see that we conform to that, or how does that work?
So
No?
what's happening is, we look at they take the actual monitoring data, so we don't have to do modeling anymore, because we're in what's called a limited maintenance plan for carbon monoxide and for PM10 in Eagle River. So they look at the monitoring data and they apply a factor that you have to be 80% or something like that of the standard. And if you're below that in actual monitored values, then you can say that you're in conformity with your plan. And you also have to ensure that you're still implementing all your control measures from your maintenance plans. So you have those two different tests.
But I guess the question I have is, says compliance to a tip. This isn't talking about actual
Right. Yeah.
air quality testing, I don't
No,
believe.
no, you don't have to do. It's the monitoring for the tip moving out into the future, the 4-year tip,
Okay,
based on the monitoring data that is in place
Right.
over the past few years.
So the resolution, if I understand it correctly, then, is simply stating that we are acknowledging that there is nothing in the 1922 tip that puts us at risk of violating that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that we are we're fiscally constrained, and we are meeting all of our obligations of our maintenance plans.
Okay, I'd ask if there's any questions or comments from the committee, but you guys are already on that one, so are there any other comments?
Funny you should ask. Yes, I have a couple. And Cindy, I'm going to direct them at you just because
Okay.
I consider you the expert here. And they're sort of generic questions. And the first is related to some of the reporting in the trend of CO concentration at the Anchorage monitoring stations, figure 1.2. It's great to see the downward trend. It looks like there's occasional spikes. What can I read into that? The sort of erratic spikes looks like about every year or so?
We have a variability of weather.
Okay, that was my
Okay, so
guess.
sometimes if we have really cold weather with more inversions, then we might see elevated concentrations at the monitors versus
Street.
really mild weather that we may not.
And depending on weather, street conditions, if we're putting down
Well,
more dirt,
Most
stuff
of
like
our
that.
problems, so this is CO, carbon monoxide, which is primarily
Oh, yeah, I guess
comes
that would
from vehicles. And our worst is at cold starts. So that's why Anchorage still does the Plug It In at 20 campaign, because that still is a needed maintenance effort to ensure that people remember to plug in their cars, because it's, even though the technology is really great, when you first start up, that technology is not working. And so if it's sitting there idling, warms up the catalyst, warms up your emission control devices, then when you're driving, they're working properly, you're not getting the extra emissions.
Okay.
So PM10 is a little different because that's the road dust, and that's where it is, there's a couple ways you can do these conformity analysis, and we almost didn't make it to show conformity because we're bouncing up against the limits due to some high elevated PM10 readings when we don't do the dust palliatives.
Right.
So it's critical, especially in Eel River, to make sure we keep the levels down and that we do it on Tudor around the monitors here so that we don't become an out-of-tune area. So that's partly why it's really, really important that it's kind of how FHWA and EPA tie in air qualities to ensure that you are meeting your air quality, because they tie the two together and they make air quality what you have to approve first. And it also makes it so that you can't really mess around too much with the tip after the fact, because in other places when you're doing your models, if you were to mess up your projects and move around,
Changes the
you have to
model.
start all over again on air quality conformity. This is not as sensitive as that, this method. That's why we have what's called a limited maintenance plan, so we don't have to do the modeling.
Right, okay, thank you.
But we'll lose that if we ever
Go over.
go over. So at Eagle River, that's what we don't want to lose, is the limited maintenance plan abilities. Because it's a lot more costly on your modeling, and you have to increase your costs.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Any comments or questions from the public? Okay, what is the will of the committee?
Move to approve. Oh,
Second.
is it my turn, your turn? I don't know.
Any objections? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Okay, moving on to Agenda 5D, 2019-2022 Transportation Improvement Program. Craig?
So this is the document itself, and the last time you saw it is when we asked you to release it as the public hearing draft so we could take it before the Anchorage Assembly. We did go to the Assembly. They recommended adding 2 projects. Those 2 projects were safety-oriented projects that they recommended adding into table, what is it now? Whatever the HSIP is. I'm gonna say it's 10, but it might be 11. I haven't got a new format here.
Eight.
Is it 8? Okay, 8. So at table 8, HSIP, they recommended adding 2 projects in there, safety projects. I suggested to them that the tables that AMATS controls the allocation of are the ones related to the roadway and the non-motorized and the CMAC. And table 8, et cetera, are outside of the AMATS allocation. We don't decide the priority of, and it's not up for us. It needs to be included in the TIP because they are federal funds spent on surface transportation improvements inside the AMATS area, but we don't decide the allocation of. But they did want to make sure that they sent up their recommendation of adding a safety improvement project around Service High School on Abbott Road, looking at pedestrian crossing there, and also a similar project at Lake Otis, and I think it'd probably be around 46th or 47th, wherever the Chester Creek Trail or the Campbell Creek Trail comes and doesn't cross over the Lake Otis there. It's been a project that has been in and out of the tip a number of times. It's in our non-motorized plans. It's basically a need for an overcrossing that would take out some multifamily structures, so it's extremely expensive. So anyway, that was the other suggestion that they had.
So Craig, those are not on here?
They're not.
They are not on here.
Okay.
Those were their recommendations, and the TAC obviously heard the information that I gave them related to those recommendations and said, well, they're outside of the AMATS allocation, so we can't control. It's not our, it's like telling the state what projects to include in the NHS, or the railroad what projects to include with their FTA funds. We don't get to do that.
Great. Chris?
I was just going to add, yeah, I know we get confused all the time.
Very similar.
I was going to add some additional flavor to it. This was Assemblymember Weddleton, who at the assembly meeting made, I believe, both amendments to
Mr. Trainee made
training
one
for training in the Lake Otis
I was just
crossing.
gonna say, you probably would do that.
Yeah, I couldn't remember, but I just thought that was some additional information that was interesting since he's on AMAS. And then the other comment I'd like to make in future memos is to, all we do is mention that the assembly heard it on December 4th. It would be good to add additional information such as whether or not it was approved, or recommended, I guess is the proper term, so that we know that it's not still at the assembly, I guess, right?
Okay?
And then
It did indeed recommend approval.
Yeah.
With those
There,
changes.
I remember. And then also, Craig, when there are proposed amendments like that at the body, can we include that in the memo so that at least it recognizes that record? And then at the TAC, they obviously said, well, no go, also reflect that in here too.
Okay.
Your report does a great job, but it'd be good if it was captured in the memo too.
All right, so that's good information. That's a good idea. So that's what we took before the TAC. At the TAC, the discussion that came up was, we had a couple of projects that the policy committee moved around, modified when it came before you guys in October. One was the northern access to UMed, and the recommendation was to take the design money, which was in 2019, and move that into a TDM study, which is included in the table here, Table 4, Plans and Studies. However, it is at that $2.5 million figure. The discussion at the TAC by those folks who are a little more learned in TDM studies was that is probably about $2 million high. A study would probably be closer to 500,000. And so they recommended a range of dropping that figure down, and that's PLN 0, or number 8, which is the bottom project in Table 4. So changing that figure of 2.5 million in 2019 to somewhere between 500 and 750,000. It sounds to me like it's closer to 500,000 would be about the right sweet spot. And then moving the additional money into either the pavement replacement or replacement buses, pavement replacement program, or the project in the CMAQ table for payment for replacement buses. I don't. They kind of were leaving it up to you folks. They didn't have a preference over one over the other. Those are just the two pots of money in our tip, which are kind of relatively easy to move monies into. They can always use more money in either pavement replacement or replacement buses. So that was their suggestion on that one. What else am I missing, Aaron? I know I'm missing something.
Check your phone.
Tell me what I'm missing.
Yeah, such a millennial.
Oh, I'm sorry, what was that?
Such a millennial.
I know.
Check your
I know.
phone.
You couldn't just tell me that across the table. It will embarrass me, apparently. So then also in the TAP table, which is, what is that now? So we changed all these tables and it's throwing me off.
Table 6.
I'm getting there. I was almost there. Table 6, the Transportation Alternatives Program, which again is outside of our standard allocation. It was money that we got for these Transportation Alternatives Program. Different entities came in and added them. We have another grandfathered project that we're working on. It's the Fish Creek Trail project that should be added into here. It already has TAP funds. We're not necessarily adding additional ones at the moment, but it should be in here just as another grandfathered project. It's in the current tip. We're still spending money on it.
Not finished, right? So
It's not
still being
finished.
Right.
patient
Yeah,
cost
yeah,
overruns.
And I believe also, if I remember correctly, Abbott Road is kind of in that same boat. We're not needing any more funding for it at the moment, but it is a project that's also grandfathered and rolling right along, still not quite finished yet.
But it's not showing on here?
It is not in that table.
So we should make sure that all grandfathered active projects should be on this tip.
Yes.
So we did a blanket amendment to this, instructions, you guys could update it, would that be the best way to?
I think
handle
that's the
it?
best way, just to make sure if we happen to miss one, we don't have to come back to you next month and say, oh, we forgot. That way we'll make sure to triple check and get all the grandfathered projects in here.
So we're talking about an amendment for adding all the grandfathered projects.
Back,
Back
and they got
into-
inadvertently
As one
removed,
amendment, yeah.
And then
Yes.
we're also looking at
removing the money, reducing the money on that one project.
from the UMed.
I've got two amendments on that one, if you want to handle the grandfather ones.
Do you want to get questions first before we start doing that?
Sorry?
Do you want to get
I'm
comments?
Yeah.
going to.
Okay.
I'm just laying it out there.
You guys are, okay, any other comments from the committee? Okay, any comments from the public? Okay, what's the will of the committee?
Move to approve the 2019 to 2022 tip.
Mr. Chairman, I have
But we have
a
to
second.
we have to- Yeah, now we
second.
can make edits.
Okay, second. We have a motion and a second.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment to the tip prior to final approval.
Okay,
I would like to modify Table 4, Project PLN 0008. I think is the right number. You verify that.
Mm-hmm.
And change the amount allocated in 2019 from 2.5 million to 750,000, please.
Second.
any objections? Okay, let's go ahead and vote on this one.
Aye.
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 Great, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I have a second amendment as well.
Okay,
I'd like to move to amend Table 5, please. Project CMQ triple or quadruple 07, transit fleet replacement operations. I have two amendments on this particular line. The first one is in the 2019 allocation to change the amount from 3.186 million to 4.936 million.
Second.
Thank you. And that's just to, I guess, add that 1.75 back in. So that's to set that amount.
okay, we have amendment 2, which is to move money into
Transit
yeah,
fleet
transit fleet
replacement.
3.186 to 4.693.
4.936.
936. Any, go ahead and vote.
Aye.
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 Great. I have one final one, and then I promise I'm done. This is only 3.
Oh, okay,
This is the last one, I promise.
okay.
I'd like to move to amend, again, Table 5, Project CMQ quadruple 07, to add the following sentence at the end of the narrative. And that sentence is 1.75 million of the 2019 allocation shall be dedicated towards electric replacement buses.
I've got a question.
Go right ahead.
That one. Why would we limit the transit to electric when from what I understand right now, there aren't charging stations. Why not allow them to bring in, as they see fit, electric or non-electric buses? Why not just give them the options there? Why just electric?
Great question. So there's two things. One, Transit is in the process of providing the electric infrastructure to support an electric fleet. They, I believe, successfully made a grant application to FTA for the electric infrastructure required for these buses. Number one, so it's in their work plan in the future anyway. And then number two, it is a priority of both my boss, the mayor, and the director of transit to be on the bleeding edge, if you will, of electrifying the fleet and identifying ways in which alternatives to diesel and/or regular gas vehicles can be implemented successfully in Alaska. And if the word shall is a little too harsh, I'd be open to modifying that so that we can give them a little bit of flexibility.
Do we have someone from transit here?
No, they had a meeting double booked.
But you're not asking the entire allocation for fiscal year 19, you're asking for a point, and maybe instead of shells, up to that amount should be,
That's
you know,
better.
the priority should be given to electric, so if they have a problem with that year, either ordering or
Perfect.
doing, if they have a chance to.
Right.
So maybe I suggest maybe doing that.
That'd be good.
I'll accept that as a friendly amendment.
Okay, I'll second that motion that's been amended.
Do we need to have that motion read back?
Restate it? Sure. Happy to. Ready, Laurie? We'll try and go slow. So the motion is to modify Table 5, Project CMQ quadruple 07, to add the following sentence. 1.75 million should be prioritized towards electric fleet vehicles,
If at all possible.
if at all possible.
And that's in the 2019 funds, right?
Right, 2019.
Okay, so we have the amendment before us. Any questions? Let's vote.
Yes,
Yes,
Yes.
thank you, I'm done.
okay, I have amendment.
Okay,
Proposed that's direction, I should say, to modify the 2019 to 2022 TIP to include all grandfathering active projects back into the TIP.
is this an amendment or is this,
It's an amendment
It
to
seems like it's
add
a
all.
correction, isn't
I
it?
think it's more of a direction, isn't it?
Craig, we could use some direction here. Is this truly an amendment? It's just fixing an error.
They have to add in, so it's an amendment.
Aaron's saying yes?
I think it's good to have it on the record.
Okay,
We're amending the plan to add in all active grandfathered projects, or to ensure that all projects are due.
Second?
okay. Let's vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aaron, is your phone showing all this stuff on there? Are we all good to go here?
Sure.
Sorry.
Recording everything.
Couldn't help it. Okay, now, we're back to
Full
the
plan.
full transportation, 2019-2020 Transportation Improvement Program
As amended.
as amended. Any other comments from the committee?
Thank you.
Any comments from the public? Okay, let's go ahead. What's the will of the committee?
Well, we already
We
moved
already
it, so we're
moved
ready
it.
to vote, sir.
Oh, okay.
Aye.
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 There we go.
Thank you very much. Very long process, longer than normal, but I appreciate it. We'll get this through to headquarters and down to the feds,
That's exciting.
moving as fast as
Tip.
possible. It's great.
It is exciting.
Now we can start the process of updating our criteria for the next one.
Oh, boy.
Hey.
All right, moving on to agenda item 5E, 2040 Metropolitan Transportation Plan Financial Assumptions. Craig?
I believe Ms. Underwood will start us off with a presentation by that other guy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, I'm Vivian Underwood, Transportation Planning. So for this item, you have a memo that summarizes the attachments, and the attachments are basically the same information but in more detail and organized a little differently. So we had a work session with you all on November 14th, and we took your feedback, and we went back, we made some changes and adjustments, and Mr. Younganalen is going to give you a presentation about what we've come up with. The TAC recommended adoption of the assumptions and methodology with no changes. So we do need your approval today. We're asking for approval so that we can go forward and come up with a fiscally constrained list of projects to present to you at a work session in January. Hopefully we'll be ready. But I'm going to turn it over to Aaron because we don't want to take up too much of your time.
Hello, everyone. Aaron Yoganalen with AMATS. So what the presentation you're going to see today is kind of a consolidated version of what we saw at the work session. So bear with me as I try and get this right. Okay. So just some general information. I'm going to try and stand over here so that the people here from the public can see. So just some general fiscal constraint analysis requirements. It kind of relates to what we were talking about at air quality. As part of the MTP, EPA requires that the MTP be fiscally constrained in order to have an air quality approval. So that's kind of where we're at right now, is to get the assumptions approved before we move to the next stage, as Vivian talked about. So what we're asking for approval today are revenue assumptions for roadway, non-motorized and transit, capital, and then there's some transit operating in there as well. An inflation factor for costs. So this is to help determine the project cost in year of expenditure dollars. And then an inflation factor for revenue to determine the revenue expenditures in year of inflation dollars. So I'll explain more of this as we go on. So I don't know if you have the physical copies, but in the electronic copies, there are a few sheets of paper. The first one we're going to do a quick focus on is this large giant one. Everyone can see. So it's split up into the different modes. So roadway is the top portion, non-motorized is the middle portion, and transit is the bottom portion.
Karen, is this 5EE, 5 Echo Echo, draft AMATS 2040 MTP, all project capital funding sources, draft December 20th, 18th?
Does it say
At the
combined?
top?
Is
Yeah,
it?
that's the one.
Yeah, that's the one.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So just really quickly, the legend in red is federal, state is purple, local is orange, and railroad is blue. So we'll kind of talk about that as we go along. So the first one we're going to focus on right now is the orange, the local revenue assumptions. So what we did here is we got some CIP information from the municipality of Anchorage, averaged it out, took that average and applied it to each year that you see in the sheet here, and added the revenue inflation factor to it to get year of expenditure dollars all the way out to 2040. So we have local bond information, which is the top one, MOA road capital, road bonds to LRTP projects. That's for roadway, then non-motorized. Down in the non-motorized category, it's MOA capital bonds to bike ped MTP projects. So I'm not really going to reference that too much more because it's just too much information. So we also have some information in there for the MOA local funds for transit. And then we have some general obligation bond proceeds for transit. So a lot of the information is very specific, very detailed, and it's in the notes portion down here. So each note, each revenue assumption has a note attached to it so you can see more information about what years we averaged, when we applied the CPI, etc. So, and we've gone over this before a couple of times, work sessions, various other meetings, so I didn't want to get into too much detail on it. Next, we have the roadway, non-motorized, and transit assumptions for state revenue. Very similar to the local revenue, we captured averaging by looking at the previous capital budgets, took an average of that, and applied it to each year with cost inflation added in for road and non-motorized. We also had some state geo bond hits. 2030 is the end of the short term, and 2040 is the end of the long term. And then we have some state general revenue for transit. So a couple things to note here is the state revenue assumptions at the TAC were recommended to go to the low scenario. We had a high scenario, so more funding, and a low scenario, less funding. And so it was recommended to go with the lower scenario. So what this means is there are 6 years of zero funding from the state in our assumptions for MTP projects. And then the state geo bond, it was talked about that having one hit in the short term and one hit in the long term was pretty reasonable to assume for this MTP. Any questions on it?
May I ask a question real quick?
Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Aaron, unless I'm looking at the wrong colored sheet, we're talking about the transit operating, I don't see the 6 years of zero funding in state.
We're not on transit operating yet. We're only on capital.
Thank you. I'm back.
Sorry, this is just capital we're focusing on. Transit operating will be one of the last ones we focus on, and that's a separate sheet.
Yep.
So, okay, next one, federal. Similar to the local and state, looked back at historic information to get us the amounts for FHW funds for NHS. This is provided by DOT, and so we plug that information in. The next one is non-NHS projects for FHW funds. That is actually based on the AMATS allocation. One thing to note here is the allocation is actually split between the different modes based on the AMATS policies and procedures that splits out how much of the AMATS allocation is going to the different modes. So roadway is 55 to 65%, non-motorized is a certain percentage, CMAC is a certain percentage, and pavement replacement is a certain percentage. Pavement replacement is not on this sheet here because that deals with maintenance. We are not at maintenance right now. We are only dealing with capital and then transit's operating. But the non-motorized is on there. The CMAC one goes all towards transit funding, so it's incorporated into the revenue assumptions we show on there. And then we have some HSIP funding. As you know, this is the dedicated funding source for safety improvements. This is all directed by the state. So all this information was given to us by state DOT. And then we have FTA funds to MOA Transit and ARRC. So the railroad does have some FTA funds that are spent within the AMATS boundary, so we put that in there, and you'll see it is the blue category under railroad. Any questions on these? So, just quickly, and I love graphs and charts. You've seen this before, but it's been just updated based on the assumptions from the work session. So here we have historical. This is all funding, kind of what the funding has looked like. So historically, you can see federal, state, and local. Sorry for people in the audience. Federal, state, and local, you can see it's kind of all over the place. Because that's how reality is you'll kind of go along and then something will happen like ARA, for example, the Recovery Act that happened was needed. So you have a huge hit of funding in there for federal. And then you have a huge hit of funding in there for state. Programmed is what's in the STIP right now, and then you have projected right here. This is, with some of the programmed, are assumptions for the MTP. These big hits right here in the state funding, those are the GEO bond hits. So you see they're pretty significant. That's why you have one in the short term, one long term. Local funding is pretty consistent, trending upwards due to inflation factors. And then you have some small hits in here for federal funding that comes through, but it's pretty steady going up due to inflation. And the assumptions are not a lot's going to change on the federal side of things until, you know, who knows what will happen in the next X number of years. So for now, it's not changing.
Aaron, why did you pick every 10 years for a GEO bond hit, but not in 2020?
Well, that's based on the actual GEO bond hits that happened. So there's one in 2002, 2008, and then in 2012. So when the 2035 and the interim MTPs were being developed, there was assumed to probably be a sooner hit based on how that has been separated out. But because of the recent state funding issues that have been happening, we kind of talked as a team, is it reasonable to assume that in a year we'd have another gigantic GEO bonds hit? And no, not really. So what we wanted to do is try and be more conservative in our approach for the GEO bonds because there's such a big spike of funding, they make a significant difference in the funding in the long term. So we wanted to say, okay, probably not one anytime soon, but at least by the end of the short term, by 2030, we can expect one more hit. And then by 2040, there's probably another one. Because at some point, the state's going to have to start paying into its infrastructure to keep it going. That's the assumption.
And then as a follow-up, the sort of the way that you've projected the GEO bond hits, and it's hard to read necessarily, but does a GEO bond bump like that typically have a 2-year? Is that a 2-year boost I'm seeing there? Essentially, there's a growth in the volume of projects or volume of dollars spent on projects for about 2 years during that curve, and then it settles back to the normal. Is that, can I read that into that? Is that about 2 years worth of projects there you're projecting?
No, it's about a year. It's just how the graph's laid out.
Okay.
It's because it goes flat and then it comes up the hit here and then has to come back down. So because of how it's laid out, it looks like it's a 2-year gap, but it really is only a 1 year. In reality, it may stretch out over. This is just trying to be as accurate as we can on this.
But just to be clear here, this is not, these are not projects, this is funding. So
Yes.
projects would be a shadow on the right of that.
Yeah, so depending on the project, more than likely, it's a project that's either barely started, needs to start, so it may not, it'd probably be later on down the line.
Aaron or Dave, I guess, really, are we still in the shadow of the 2012 GO bond? How long did that one have a shadow for?
Wolf, can you,
Sorry, is the question again?
I'm just trying to picture in my head, if you have a state GO bond, so you have that blip in funding,
Yes.
as Dave explained, the actual projects that follow from that blip sort of create a shadow behind it. And I'm just curious how long that typically is. Are we talking about 2 years worth of projects that follow a GO bond hit? Is it 6 years?
so like for the 2012, are we still, I believe
Yeah,
we still have projects that we're working on from that, right?
We're still executing 2012 bonding projects right now. So
Okay.
we're to 6 years from the 2012 library.
Okay, thank you.
That's why we tried to space them out, so just to give that a little bit of time, but it's hard to come up with the GO bond hits. Should they be the beginning of the hit or at beginning of the years or the end? So we can adjust them as needed if you guys desire today.
Thank you.
Okay. This is just a quick breakdown of the 2040 revenue sources by mode. As you can see, 85% of it is on roadway, 12% of it is on non-motorized, 1% on railroad, and 2% on transit. Please, again, recognize this is only capital, this is not operating. Any questions? Okay. So we'll get into the factors really quick. So we're talking about year of expenditure dollars. How we do that is we have an inflation factor, one on the cost, and then one on the revenue. So right here we have the cost inflation factor. This doesn't come into play yet because we don't have the projects, we don't have the costs in front of us today. We're not actually using it, but we still need approval to use it so we can get to that where, here's our funding, here's our project costs with all the inflations added in, where are we at the end of the 40 years? Do we have too many projects or too few projects? So what we did is we looked at the FHWA National Highway Construction Cost Index, and then we took it to the municipality of Anchorage and the Department of Transportation to get their input on some of our recommendations based on this index. So the index is tough to use up here because nationally we are more expensive in our construction costs than other places. So what we did is we took what the National Construction Cost Index said, we brought it to the Median DOT and said, okay, should we bring this up? And they're like, yes, we should bring it up, or should we bring it down? We had a couple of options in here, and the TAC work session, TAC Policy Committee work session recommended we go with the 2 and 2.5. So that basically is projects are going to cost more in the MTP. And you'll notice it's 2.5 in the long term just because it's recommended that as you go along, project cost is probably going to go up at some point because it's so volatile with oil, we don't really know when, but you can easily split that between short term's a little less expensive right now and then long term will probably be more expensive.
Aaron, going back just to the previous slide for a second. So when you have the roads there, is that, when you have a project that encompasses like something for transit, something for non-motorized, do you try to parse that out, or how does this?
No, so thank you for mentioning that. It's one thing I always forget to tell people. So this roadway percentage here is including roadway projects that also have non-motorized projects with them. It's hard for us to parcel out how much it's going to cost for the non-motorized improvements on the project, because when we do the cost estimates, we just say, okay, here's design, utilities, right-of-way, construction, and it's all kind of lumped together. So this portion here that's 12% for non-motorized, those are individual non-motorized projects. So adding a bike lane somewhere, or adding a missing sidewalk somewhere, or going back in and rehabbing, or that's not part of it, rehabbing is not part of it, but adding in those kind of individual pieces, whereas the roadway ones already incorporate the non-motorized in. So that's why we try not to have duplicate projects in there. So if, you know, a project recommended says add a bike lane here, we have a project coming through, roadway project coming through, it's, in essence, we combine the two projects so we don't duplicate our project cost.
So this is a little bit, I mean, for the average person looking at this, it's skewed incorrectly towards roads if you look at it.
Yes,
Okay.
Well,
Thanks.
Very simple.
but it's.
everybody
Sorry?
correctly, but it's skewed.
It's
Yeah, I mean-
skewed because we don't have the capability, we haven't yet gotten to the point to be able to account for what percentage of a
Right.
project is non-motorized. We could probably come up with that, but my recommendation to do that would be a long, lengthy process, kind of figure out what it is on average, and then work with the committees, work with the public, and say, okay, here's our
Right.
recommendation for future MPPs.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any questions on the cost inflation factor? You'll see this more as we go on, so don't worry. We'll deal with it intimately soon. Next is the revenue inflation factor. So this is directly related to what we're talking about today. This is how we get year of expenditure dollars on all the revenue assumptions we've been talking about. So when it says that, you know, CPI has been applied to this starting in this year, this is the percentage that we're talking about. So we base this using the FHWA recommended usage of local consumer price index for the urban area. So when we got to the TAC work session, or the work session, we talked about this. We actually have a spreadsheet where we show all the different CPIs back to 1980 something. And then averaged it out, and it came out to be about 2.1%. And it was recommended that we look at the federal CPIU because a lot of our funding comes from federal, and interestingly enough, it's the same 2.1%. So staff felt comfortable to go ahead and recommend that we use 2.1% for our revenue inflation. Any questions on that?
Seems a little low.
We can change it if we want, but right now, we've been noticing that the consumer price index has been going down pretty significantly up here for us in Anchorage. Is that going to stay that way? Yeah.
It's been going the other direction, actually.
Well, the data that we gathered showed
According to the
it.
Department of Revenue, at least, it went up
Well, it was probably, when was that for?
second half of 18. I'm sorry,
Okay.
first half of 18.
So when did we stop looking at this then? Because it's still pretty, it was, well, when we last looked, it was still in the decimal point something for the years.
Yeah, the percentage change in 2016 was to decrease, but only by 0.1%, or 0.1%. But then it turned the corner in 17 and started coming back up.
Okay, I'll have to look into it, but, because we used the state consumer price index one for the Anchorage urbanized area, and it was in the point somethings for 17, I thought, based on what we pulled for the annual number.
The annual change was 0.5 for 17,
Yeah.
but the first half of 18 was 2.1.
Really? Oh, we don't look at we don't do that. We only do the annual at the very end to determine what the entire year was.
Okay.
Because it's kind of unrealistic, because you can have a really good first portion and then a really bad second. So we only look at the final number for the annualized changed.
Okay.
So that's why it's a little different. And so
I only see the first, they only have the first half of the year posted anyway, and it's 2.1, so.
that was our problem, is it was, so it may go back up, it's just, we gotta wait for the second half of it. And we can look at that at the next MTP as well. I think 2.1's pretty conservative, in line with the rest of the document, to say, okay, let's not be too overly robust with our revenue assumptions that we're getting. But we can keep an eye on it and see if it changes significantly enough later.
I guess I should have asked this question before I start arguing over whether it's high or low. What's the real world impact of the CPI revenue on revenue? And essentially what we're saying is our revenue we get today will be worth less in a few years. But does that mean that it argues in favor of greater revenue now? I mean, I guess, tell me the real world implication of this.
Wait, before you go there, what this says is projected revenue inflation. So this is not talking about inflation. That 2.1% is not what is going to cost more. what I read that as, this is how much more revenue we project we'll have. I mean, we're talking about the same thing, but this is not cost, this is revenue here.
Right, and I'm sorry, I'm not saying that it's cost, it's saying that the money that you have today will be worth less next year.
No, but this is not saying that. This is saying you're gonna have 2.1% more revenue in the future than you have now, I believe.
Is that what it's
Correct
saying
me if I'm
there?
wrong.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's basically accounting for an inflation factor, inflation that happens.
Right.
So when you compare it to costs in the short term, we're basically saying our revenues are increasing higher than the cost of projects. So that basically means we're in more or less, I know there's a lot of details for those who deal with this on a regular basis. We're generalizing things here, so please don't kill me. It's basically saying that we're getting more money than our projects are costing. So we'll hopefully have some extra left over. But the real key is in the long term, we're saying that project cost is 2.5%. So we're saying that project costs are actually going to exceed what our revenues are expected for inflation.
It's, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, but this is a zero-sum game. You're saying, you're trying to figure out what your revenues will be that will buy you the same project today that it will buy you in 10 years. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's why you often have to make some hard choices about what projects you want in and out, because you're never gonna, it is very rare to find a place that is gonna have enough revenue to cover all of their needs. So, sorry to be really blunt about that, but that's the reality.
I don't think you're surprising anybody at this table.
Not at all. Welcome.
Okay, any questions about revenue? The inflation factor, I mean? Okay. Now we are on to transit operating. So transit is not here today, so I can say whatever I need. No,
Electric buses for everybody.
everyone's getting, free bus pass for life.
There we go.
So,
I think I need to rein this meeting in a little bit here.
sorry, I'm trying to keep it on time. So transit operating. The reason we're showing transit operating in here is because transit is so linked to the operating in order to function. So roadways are very capital focused because you need the capital investment to keep them going. You still need operations and maintenance. I'm not saying operations and maintenance is not important for roadways, but in this speech, this arena, what we're talking about is just kind of the main funding that is needed to keep things going, to do improvements. So transit relies heavily on operating to expand routes, add additional buses, so reduce from 15 to 30 or 30 to 15-minute headways, etc. So in the past, what has happened is transit's been combined with its capital and operating, and it gives kind of an unrealistic picture about what transit can afford in the life of the MTP. So this time around, transit and the project team worked really closely on this and came up with, well, let's split out the capital and operating. So we've shown you the capital already, and here's the operating. Operating is made up of a bunch of sources. There's a little from federal, there's some from state, but as you can see, I don't actually have it broken out, but this should give you a good idea that the majority comes from local sources. So that'd be general obligation bond proceeds, passenger fares, general revenue, advertising revenue, facility rentals, etc. So the reason we want to be very clear here is what this is kind of spelling out is on this sheet here, the other colored sheet that is draft AMATS 2040 MTP transit operating revenue sources. The reason we're bringing this to you for the assumption is because the assumption is this right here is the amount of money it'll take to continue operating the current transit system out to 2040. So that's really key to understand, because what that's basically saying is no new revenue assumptions are going to be projected for the entire life of the MTP, which is directly linked to what transit projects can be added to the MTP. So because this is saying we're only going to ever get enough money to maintain what we currently have today, means no additional routes or frequency changes are going to be happening in the life of the MTP. Now, there's still capital projects, but those are like bus stop enhancements and some other things, some smaller little things like that. So this is key, because when we start getting to the project list and people are like, we need more buses, we need here and here. Well, where's the revenue going to come from to do that? To do the operating of those new routes. So, just want to make it really out front, make sure everyone's on board. because it'll be pretty important when we get to the project stage. Any questions on it? Okay. Okay, you guys have been awesome. What next? We have hopefully approval of the fiscal assumptions today. And then in January, as Vivian said, we're going to have a work session with the TAC, CAC, and Policy Committee to sit down and start going over the modeled results, the project lists, the project costs, and then do all of the work by combining that with the fiscal assumptions. So if we have approval today, we know where our line is in the sand that says this is how much we can afford. And in January, we'll be able to say, well, we have this much we can afford, but we have this much need. So what are we going to do with, moving forward to get it fiscally constrained? Questions?
Not a question, just thank you. That's a really good presentation, very helpful.
Thanks.
Any other questions from the committee? Questions from the public? Okay, what's the will of the committee?
Move to approve all the assumptions for the 2040 MTP.
About move to approve the 2040 MTP financial assumptions,
Oh.
2040 MTP capital sources and methodologies, and the 2040 MTP transit operating revenue assumptions.
Oh, very good. Second. Be complete.
All right. Let's vote.
I-
Aye. Okay, are there any other action items, Craig?
No other action items.
Okay, moving on to agenda item 6A, the Coordinated Transportation Plan update.
So I will just give you a quick update on what our transit director shared with me on what's happening with that coordinated plan. So GridWorks, who was the prime consultant, is not doing consulting anymore, so they agreed to finish this plan with their limited staff resources and with additional help from the local public involvement person who's Agnew Beck was a subcontractor. So Agnew Beck has been doing a lot of the efforts along with the transit department. The plan is,
GridWorks went out of business?
well, they didn't go out of business, but they're just not doing this kind of consulting anymore. They're a Portland-based firm that,
Yeah.
They're the ones who do coordinated plans around the country. And apparently we scared them off and they never want to do them again. I don't know. I don't know exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Wasn't my fault, I promise you this time. Plan is on budget. There was a working group meeting which was held yesterday to look at the working draft. The draft looks really good. It's coming along very well. Those working group comments are supposed to be in by the end of the month. A public review draft will get to the TAC in January for a shorter release. All of our major plans that AMATS have a 30-day public release that we require. This is not a primary plan, so we can do a shorter public release. So we're looking at just a 15-day release just in terms of getting that thing moving along. It'll come back to the TAC for comment responses at their February meeting, with it coming to you for final approval at the February 28th Policy Committee. That is the extent of the approval process because it's just an AMATS plan and it's not a primary plan. And that's all I have to share on that based on that email from Ms. Acton. So,
Questions from the committee?
None.
Questions from the public? Okay, thank you. Any comments from the committee?
Happy holidays.
Any comments from the public?
Happy holidays.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Jessica Smith, Chief of Planning at the AMATS Borough. So I'm here to introduce you all to Ben Coleman, who is a transportation planner with the borough. He's following what I've been doing, just coming out here and being a representative of the borough, because as of January the 18th, I am leaving the state of Alaska. My husband has been relocated down to be in his main headquarters office. So great news for him, sad news for me. But you've got a great guy here. Ben's been on staff for a little over a year now. He has his master's in regional planning from Cornell and has been doing a lot of the work kind of in the background that I do externally. So he'll also be doing a lot of work with DOT and whatever else they need him to do at the borough in the interim while they transition me out. So anyway, it's kind of sad news. I'm sorry to leave you all, and I'll miss you very much. But thank you so much.
Thank you for participating and for sharing stuff that's going on out there. And Ben, welcome.
thank you.
Come by and see us anytime. And thanks for coming. I've got one thing. Is there, we came real close to not having a quorum today. Is there any thought to having something like 24 hours ahead of time? We let folks know if we're here or not, because I'd sure hate to have everybody show up and there's only two of us. This is, I think that we've had a couple other ones like this where it got real tight, but would that be a possibility to have something where 24 hours before we say, and I'm not sure if we could cancel the meeting then or not, because there's probably notifications that need to go out.
Well, what I do is I get responses back from people telling me if they're going to be here or not. And so I obviously count to 3. I
Okay.
can count that high. And when I get to 3, I know I've got a quorum. And
Okay.
if I had heard from one of the 3 of you that you wouldn't be able to make it, then I would
Okay, so you're already on this.
on
Okay.
changing it around.
And if I can add some color to that, part of what happened today is the Assembly is going through a unique process with selecting a temporary representative from Eagle River due to Amy Denboski's appointment for the governor. It was scheduled right on top of this. They both members really wanted to be
Oh, right.
here.
I saw those emails.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, we got it covered, never mind then. So the other thing I want to say is, for those of you who are maybe not aware, we had an earthquake, and the Department of Transportation and Public
Slept right
Facilities was, made national news. We have 49 other DOTs who are getting questions on why they can't repair their potholes. And we also had,
Ashto, I'm sure.
to me, there were 2 cherries on top of this pie. One of them was Snopes had to do a "this is real" type of thing. And then the other one was, there was a gentleman from Caltrans in the Bay Area in California who was interviewed on how we did it.
Yeah.
Incorrectly.
Oh.
Incorrectly stated how we had done it. So that was kind of a. for me, it was
Did you go
like-
send him something to correct it?
What's that?
Did you go and?
No, I posted it on my Facebook page. But I would like to thank the Muni, APD in particular, and then all the contractors, because they, as soon as the shaking stopped, they went out and started heating oil, because they knew we were gonna get on this thing right away. And without them doing that, we would have never been able to, and we were also pretty fortunate that we didn't have this kind of weather when it happened. And lastly, we've got a huge amount of work to get out our regular program, and now we've got all this additional work. That's a lot of work that we're gonna have to get out before the end of the year here, so. Anyway, it was the most fun I've had in my career, because there were no permits, no contracts, no nothing.
That's right. Just go. Just build it.
All right, well, thank you all, and I'm gonna go ahead and adjourn this meeting at 2:31.